Hi there, I'm Trevor Coote, and this is Business is Fucking Hard, the podcast where business owners pull back the curtain and talk about the realities of owning a business. We'll hear their stories, learn some lessons, and have some fun along the way. Thanks for joining us. On today's episode, we're joined by Matt Pasut. After 18 years in business, Matt has seen a lot of ups and downs. He will open up about his journey of growing CR Creative from a startup in his basement to the business it is today, and more recently acquiring a second company, Team Outfitters. Matt shares his experiences with us, good and bad. I hope you enjoy his story. Matt, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Hi, thanks, Trevor. I appreciate you asking me to be on this. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. As you and I have talked in the past, the headline of the podcast, business really is hard, and I want to just take the opportunity to kind of pull back the curtain and share that with a broader audience and hear the stories of business owners. So inviting you today to just share your story with me and be honest and a little bit vulnerable with kind of sharing that story. But let's start right from the beginning. What was your introduction to business? Was it influence from family, from somebody else that you saw, or as in some cases people just stumble into it? What was your entrance into becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, when I went to college actually for graphic design, and during that whole course, it was a 3-year course, kind of a bird thing we did, but it really kind of introduced that as an option, a career path, to get into, either a freelance designer or working for agencies or that type of thing. So shortly after graduating from college, I had a buddy of mine that I went to high school with actually approach me that he'd started this marketing consultancy agency and wondered if I'd be interested in coming on board. At the time, I think I was about 22, and my whole mindset was, I'm young enough that if I fuck this up, I can start again somewhere else. And why not? We got to take this opportunity and jump in. So I did. Jumped in with 2 feet, really 2 young guys working out of a basement, just trying to figure it out as we went. Learned a lot of the hard lessons, like you have to pay, we're in Ontario here, you have to pay HST. At the time it was GST. And if you don't, they'll actually lock down your bank account, and a pretty little white car shows up at the end of the laneway and gives you some supreme shit. So we learned all those lessons kind of right from the start, and just kind of grew from there. So that was definitely, my dad back in the day was he had his own business, but he actually went into working working for somebody in Sarnia here. So I was never exposed to that at a young age. I just kind of had that idea of let's try it out, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we can figure it out as we go.
And that's so funny that you mentioned HST, GST, like the remittance aspect. I'm so curious how many business owners start a business as you did. And I love the idea that, you're young enough. If this doesn't work, I mean, you've got a whole life ahead of you. You'll figure it out. You'll land on your feet. You have to have confidence. You have to be a little bit fearless, and take that risk. But that I had the exact same experience that, like all of a sudden you start to realize, okay, there's actually remittances that have to go to government and that kind of thing. Yeah. How many people learn this stuff on the fly? I might have to interview somebody from CRA at some point.
That's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what you learn by doing. When you start hiring employees, it's a whole new ballgame after that. But I absolutely agree that there's no course I don't think you could take that's going to prepare you for everything. Anything kind of pre-made, and I've sat on some boards and some committees and stuff like that kind of help nurture entrepreneurship, but they always miss out on those nuances, like pay your HST on time, because if not, you're going to be in trouble. Like they don't really cover that. They show you how to maybe register for it in the first place, but don't kind of give you the checks and balances that you may need or take for granted once you get into it.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that is one thing about entrepreneurship. You just said it is learning on the fly, right? Like the most expensive lessons that I had in, it was way more expensive than a university degree.
Oh, absolutely.
Throughout the time of business. Okay. So you're 22, you get started, a great startup story in somebody's basement, kind of plunking away, trying to tell me about the company today. And then maybe we can kind kind of talk about the evolution to where you are today, because I know you and I have chatted more recently about some of your major moves. So where are you at today?
So today I still own the original company, which has had about 3 or 4 iterations. And I also own another company that does more of the branded apparel and promotional items and stuff like that. So the 2 companies I own, CR Creative is the one, and that's the marketing company that, again, is about the 4th iteration of that startup from the basement. And then about 2.5 years ago, I purchased an existing company, Team Outfitters, where we are branded apparel for sports teams and schools and that type of stuff. So, like I said, it'd been around about 30 years. I jumped into that and kind of give it a bit of an overhaul as well.
Yeah, and I think that was the last time you and I chatted. Maybe once since, but you were kind of in that process of acquisition and integration. So I want to talk more about that at some point, like in a little bit. But what's your team complement now? How many between the two companies? How many do you have staff?
2, I think we're north of 20, or give around 20 people, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Team Outfitters was an acquisition. CR Creative was an evolution. So, what was that evolution like over that those 4 iterations, major milestones, major stumbling blocks? What did it look like?
When CR first started there back in the basement, it was with a business partner. We grew it fairly rapidly, making a lot of mistakes along the way, but learning from those mistakes. I forget the timeline now, but we worked together for a few years and realized at one point that the partnership wasn't working, the trajectory wasn't working, so we needed to make a change. My partner exited the company at that point in time. I took it over, and at the time we had 2 employees. I basically sat them both down and said, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep you employed, but we're going to put our head down and start running and see what happens. I changed the name of the company to Country Road Graphics at the time. Super original, because I live on a country road and I assumed I'm going to be bringing this thing back home and working out of my basement. And that's important, because I'll tell you a piece about why we changed the next iteration. So the business at the time did basically graphic design, print services, a lot of outsourced printing, print brokering, if you will. Basic web development, that sort of thing. Over the next few years, we kind of grew to build the team up. We were able to secure some pretty big contracts to do some work with some national clients. We brought in some of those outsourced print services in-house, bought some printing equipment and that sort of thing. And today we're kind of at a full marketing service, and there's a few more steps in there. So I would say that the next iteration, though, from the 2 guys working in a basement to Country Road is, I'm going to say it was around 2018, give or take. We had built this company at the time. I think I had 15 employees within it, to be more multifaceted and being able to do a lot more than just print services and graphic design services. So the name, I felt, Country Road Graphics, really didn't do us any favors. I was actually at a trade show in Vegas with one of our big clients, and I had a customer come up to me and say, you owe me $1. I said, why is that? He's like, because of the word Country Road there. He said, I'm from West Virginia, and John Denver make that famous because of us, so you owe me $1 every time you use it. I said, okay. So we were that hit me a little bit. He's like, okay, yeah, you may not be taking us that seriously with this Country Road name. It was never meant to grow into the size and scale of the business that we were in. So we kind of got to work, and being in the marketing world that we were in, it was probably one of the most difficult processes of trying to rebrand and get a consensus on what makes sense next. But we rebranded at the time to CR Creative Co. Limited to try to get people to look at us in a new light, because what we started at, we were no longer at that point. We were a lot bigger and more robust and had a lot more services to offer. So when we rebranded to CR Creative, it's like a light switch went off. It was absolute perfect timing. We were just bringing into like the digital marketing world of Facebook marketing and social media and stuff. I did some training in New York to kind of beef up our skills on that. And as soon as we flipped that light switch, new opportunities just started flooding in. Big opportunities to kind of follow the trends and follow where the market was going. They were less concerned about, printing promotions and stuff, like more concerned about this new digital world at the time. So that's where CR Creative kind of come from, and that's where it got us to that iteration where we kind of are today. Now, we've seen peaks and valleys, and COVID really threw us for a spin, but we're at a point today where we are still that full service company. We have a lot of in-house production capabilities with CR Creative, and a dedicated team that can help with just about every layer of marketing you would ever need on that side.
Really, really awesome. So a steady evolution over that period. Two questions that come out of that story.
Yep.
The first, when there were two employees and your partner was exiting, and was there hesitation from you? Like, did you look at that as, this is sheer opportunity, I'm still young enough, if this fails I can do other things, or was it, did you kind of battle, like, maybe this is my time to exit as well? Like, what was kind of your sense there?
It definitely went both ways. I could have been convinced quite easily to walk away, just as easy as that. At the end of it, I think just pure circumstantial how it shook out, where he decided to leave and I decided to stay. It was a struggle. There was definitely, am I not cut out to be this business person that I've started at here? Am I ready to do this on my own? That sort of thing.
Some imposter syndrome.
Absolutely. Yeah. And understanding kind of what we had built and where I knew we would have to take it or go, and just some hills we would have to climb to get to that next step. Ultimately, when the chips fell and we ended up where we were at, it's just a straight opportunity at that point. And I basically had that mindset, which I still have today, is there's not a soul out there that's going to outwork me then. Is if I'm committed to this, I'm going to outwork any competition we would have, or anything that resembles competition that we have, and do our damnedest to make it work anyway.
Who was in your corner at that time? Like, who did you like? It sounds like it was obviously a big decision. One, as you said, you could go either way. Who was the kind of person or people that you went to and said, okay, I need to talk this out? Or was it just you and your thoughts, and you just kind of got there on your own?
There was a few. My dad was one that actually kind of stepped up and helped me out get to that next step. Financially, I tend to find, and I think a lot of people watching this, if they're entrepreneurs, tend to find that your circles are kind of built around other entrepreneurs. It's really difficult for me to have a really, in-depth conversation with somebody that isn't an entrepreneur, because they just don't understand what we go through. So during that time, and every major stage and every major decision I've had to make, I've got a close friend that also is in business. We always, candidly talk about these types of issues and things that are coming there. My wife at the time, actually we were getting married shortly after that, that the whole thing kind of went south. That's that whole kind of close network there. But I think primarily it's going to be the ones that have an understanding of what you're going through, as opposed to, like, I had consultants and stuff I've worked with that, again, help consult other businesses and stuff like that. The people you went to high school with may not be the best ones to consult on something like this, because they're the ones, making a wage every day and really don't fully understand that financial impact that you're taking on there.
How did you protect others around you? It's interesting to me, the phrasing that you used about, I'm just going to outwork everybody else. Like, when you're making that decision in that moment of your partner's leaving, you go to your dad, he's going to help you out financially. You build that base to be able to see success for yourself. And that one thing that you can bring to the table, whether imposter syndrome is there or not, you're going to work hard for this. Yeah. But you're just about to get married. Maybe or don't know, you're going to start a family. How, that work, and every entrepreneur has been there. 20 hours out of 24 hours are spent thinking about working for that business. How do you balance? How do you protect your loved ones and the people around you that are there to support you, want to see you succeed, but your focus is on your business?
I think this kind of lends into this whole work-life balance, which is total bullshit. I've had a couple. It doesn't
be honest. Be honest.
Work-life integration. I had somebody tell me one time, that's more like it. Is
sure,
there's a time to work and there's a time to rest. And I think my wife, even, before we got married, she knew it's not new. Like, I was an entrepreneur before we got married and after, and my kids have only known me as this. I I don't know. They just deal with it. In terms of protecting them or trying to, like, they understand that the business has to take priority a lot of times. Dad's got to go to work today. It's Saturday, Sunday, whatever it is. It's not going to be every Saturday or Sunday. And when we're off, we're off. Like, we're going to definitely shut down and try to disconnect as much as humanly possible. But the integration piece of it is, to me, the only way. This whole, clocking off at 5 o'clock and not thinking about work, forget it. Like, it's 24/7, even now. And I did the math on this morning because I knew it might come up. I've been in it almost 18 years now. And every day is exactly the same. There's still anxiety attacks. There's still full-blown, 24/7 thinking about potential issues or opportunities or anything else that come from that. I don't think it ever goes away. Even some of the most successful people out there are still working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And that's just what it is. I wouldn't want it any other way myself, but.
Yeah, it's that fulfillment, right? And I mean, there is an aspect, the people around you start to talk burnout or are worried for you.
Yeah.
And it's quite honestly, for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's, if I didn't have this, I'd be more worried about myself than when I do work this hard, right?
Yeah.
So I still want to get to my other question, which I had a while ago on your journey. But just before I go there, who's the group around you now? Who, like, has that evolved? I mean, as you get more familiar and more accustomed and more skilled at being an entrepreneur, you get kind of the basics of paying your remittances to the government down. Now you're talking strategy, and that's kind of how you and I connected by chance over LinkedIn, and we've had some great conversations. And but who's that group around you now?
So there's been employees that have worked their way up to being trusted advisors and that sort of thing. I've got a couple employees that are in that level with me. There is a network of mentors, and I attribute a lot of the success I've had to mentors like you, working with you on different things and just brainstorming different outcomes. There's still a network of 3 or 4 guys that I call up and women that I call up at any time just to bounce ideas off of, and what am I missing on this sort of thing. That's kind of the one I talk to probably most frequently is one of my staff that has really worked her way up to being that number 2 for me, and can see it from the set of eyes that this isn't about me and my role within the company. This is about the organization as a whole. And that's where a lot of staff and employees maybe have a hard time with that, which rightfully so. They're employees. That's what they're there for. But to think of it and look at it from the 10,000 foot level, it's difficult to find people that if they haven't been there yet, then they don't know what to look for and really don't know how to handle that type of situation. Again, friends, a good friend of mine, we talk every day about different business issues and talk each other off the ledge and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at this point, is that next level of been there, done that type of people.
This is a good segue into the other question that I had, which was around the rebranding. Going from Country Road to CR Creative. You identified that, you didn't get 100% buy-in. Or it took you a while to get there. There was conversations. I think you said at that time you had 15 employees. Was it the conversations with the employees? Did you go out to kind of your main client base, other stakeholders? What did that whole because I mean, a rebranding can be seen as, okay, you just changed your logo and your name and but as you said, it was the launching point, and you can't put all of the credit on the rebrand to kind of your next success, but there is something there, and it's a huge decision. And what did that process look like?
It was absolutely only focused on, actually I shouldn't say only focused on, the employees had a huge part of this. There was a lot of discussions. There was a lot of debating. We're a creative field, so there was a lot of creative ideas get thrown out. We actually did sit down when we got closer to that finalizing the plan with it. I brought a group of customers together, took them out for dinner, did a little bit of a spiel, kind of pitched them the idea on a off the record type of basis, and got feedback and buy-in. And when their eyes lit up when I showed them the new approach, I knew we were onto something. Obviously, the mentors getting their take on it. What are we missing here? What are the pitfalls that we may run into? Accountants, lawyers, there's a lot of that stuff that comes into a full rebrand, from changing the name on the checks to everything else that happens there.
Right.
It's not little. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of things you don't think of as you go through that process. But I tried to get everybody and their brother to weigh in on it. Even when we got down to the logos, we probably had 24 different logo ideas, and which ones do you like, which ones do you not like, to try to get a general consensus and make sure we weren't missing anything. And that's one of my processes now is, if I have an idea, first I beat the hell out of it, and then I get all these people to try to beat the hell out of it even further. What are we missing before we go crazy here, spending some money or making a pivot like that? So, yeah.
Which can be risky, right?
Absolutely.
Like to have that many voices, and to, as soon as somebody gets an opportunity to give feedback, they feel like that they're part of the decision, right? Or of influence. And they do, in the sense that you're asking for their feedback, but it's not that their feedback is necessarily going to be the way you take. So it's interesting that you have that big of a stakeholder group that you run those things past.
I wouldn't know if I'd recommend it moving forward. Like, we do that now, and I think one of my faults is I have all these different ideas and all these different sort of movements or opportunities. I keep looking at it as soon as I have the opportunity, I try to bring that team together, and I may bring people in that either overwhelmed to begin with and might look at this opportunity as more work for them, so that they're a little bit biased on their decision making. And I'm just realizing that as of late is I try to make it a really, all the businesses and all the people I'm working with, I want it collaborative. I want them to be part of the decision making process. But when I take a step back and look at it, I think it's overwhelming for a lot of them to see. I run at 1,000 miles an hour, and I'll have 10 new ideas a day, and to pull them aside 10 times a day to say, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? It's overwhelming. So trying to kind of slow it down a little bit, vet it a little further myself before I start to go that route, and then maybe look at the trusted advisor group as opposed to the entire team until we get a little bit further down that road.
And in the case of a logo or rebranding, I mean, some people would look at it as that. So if I think this is a great idea, but I'm the one that's going to be tasked with changing the logo on all of the website and all of the forms and the checks and all of the administrative duties that come with that. That's one thing. And their decision is going to be influenced by that. There's no question. Yep. But then the other side is the impact of a decision that might create change within the environment that they know. So you change a software system, or you get feedback, and they're like, no, I'm good, because they see the implications of that, right? In their day-to-day.
New clients, new employees, new bodies, new personalities, all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I want to talk. I do want to get your sense on kind of HR. I think for the small business owners, just a quick conversation about kind of that personality piece, finding people and kind of that culture fit. But before we go there, I just want to finish the conversation about your evolution here and dive into the acquisition, because I think for a lot of small business owners, they don't necessarily know, certainly when they get into business, but even at any point on their journey, that they're going to be in a position to buy another company. And a well-established company in your case. So what was that experience like? Did you see it coming? And what's the kind of in hindsight 2020, what's the story?
So a couple things with that. Leading up to the big one of Team Outfitters, I did purchase a couple smaller companies, usually 1 or 2 man shows, that I kind of integrated into CR Creative. So we had a web design company which brought with us our lead web programmer. So it brought a few clients, but more or less it brought the talent. A sign company, which was an older guy that was ready to retire. We just kind of brought him in. He worked with us for a while. We took care of some of his customers, and then he went off to retirement. So the concept wasn't new. I was able to kind of test it on small steps. The big thing that brought me to taking a big leap with team, that sort of thing, it was about a 3-year conversation, but it was, to be perfectly honest, I felt like I did everything I could with CR Creative. I had a team that was running it. I was at that point where okay, they're looking after clients. The day-to-day is pretty well covered here. I'm not adding anything to this. I'm just being a nuisance and getting in the way with all my new ideas. I want to run. I got time on my hands now, so I'm coming up with 1,000 new ideas. And then every time I run to them, well, we don't have the capacity. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the capacity. So I kind of said, all right, well, if this thing's running on its way, maybe I need to think about what's next. We had done a little bit of promotional products and apparel and that sort of thing, and kind of dipped our toes in it a little bit, bought some single head embroidery machines because I had this big brainstorm that we're going to do corporate apparel on a really small scale. Like, I want to work with 5 companies and just do their uniforms. So let's bring an embroidery machine in and just do those uniforms. Well, then that turned into 5, turned into 10, turned into 200-piece orders, turned into these big things that we're trying to do in these 2 little machines. I'm like, there's opportunity here. This thing is going gangbusters. Maybe this is my next step. So I put a feeler out there. Anybody know of anything? Mutual connection connected me to the business owner, former business owner here of team. We had some conversations. We batted around a few ideas. To be honest, the very first offer I made him, I completely botched. I missed a huge component of it and offended the hell out of him and owned it every step of the way. Like, after I submitted it, I fucked that one up. Yep, I don't know how we missed that with accountants and lawyers and everybody looking at it. So luckily, it wasn't enough for him to walk away from the table, but we talked for a couple of years, I think it took, until he realized he was ready to exit, and we were able to put a deal together. So, it was definitely a big swing. It was definitely a big risk, but it was something that I needed something different, because I was chomping at the bit, sitting there every day with all this energy to go somewhere and nowhere to drive it. So, and it was an absolute ideal fit after that. So in hindsight, it was exactly what I needed, and it's done everything it wanted to do. I needed it to do to fulfill that need I was after. So
I think that was one of our first conversations was you kind of battling against this. You didn't use the word, but I'll use it, boredom, or getting bored with kind of the everyday. And like you said, you had a great team supporting you, and then it was a question of, what's next for you, that's so I'll challenge you here. Do you see that happening again? Like, you
No.
acquire team outfit, you're kind of on a steady trajectory now, and you're content with your own contributions.
I've figured out what my limit is. I exceeded that limit in terms of what I'm capable of handling. And now I'm starting to kind of pull back and realize, we're good. Yeah. So I could see additional acquisitions of similar companies, like I talked about before with CR, where if it's a struggling apparel company that we can kind of roll in and not have to take on, a tremendous amount of staff or debt or anything like that to do it. I could see that maybe making sense, but I have a lot of growth opportunities with the company now that I think I'm more than fulfilled for as long as I want to be, and can take this thing 100 different directions. And that's another piece that I think I was really striving for at CR, was something that was more scalable. CR is all client services, one-to-one, highly talented people that can deliver amazing results. We're in small town Ontario. Those type of people don't come along very often to be able to staff for and to be able to grow there, nor do the clients. Like, again, we're small town Ontario here. So to really scale and grow that really wasn't an option, whereas on the apparel side, it absolutely is. And building the capacity and putting the equipment and processes in place now has allowed us to really scale this thing to new heights, for sure. So
that's really awesome. I'm going to say in this moment, congratulations, Matt, because I think that, that's a big deal, to be able to know that those opportunities are in front of you, that you've built something that gives you kind of that personal capacity to manage. So that kudos. That's really awesome. How many people were at Outfitter Team when you brought them in? Do you remember that? Like the integration, the number of staff you had versus the number of staff that you're bringing in with Team Outfitters.
So they are 2 completely different entities. I didn't merge the 2 together. They're 2 totally separate enterprises. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I don't think there was 10. I think there was maybe close to that, though. Maybe 7 or 8. I can't remember off the top of my head without doing the numbers. But,
okay.
I
was going to talk about kind of that culture change, if there was one, with people working together. And
I can speak to that a little bit. That and we're kind of in a repair mode right now, if you will, is after the acquisition, I devoted 99% of my time to
Right.
Team Outfitters. That has resulted in some culture issues, struggles with CR because I'm not there nearly as much as I probably should be. I tried different angles of empowering staff to manage it. They did as best as they could, but they were still requiring that additional support, which at the time I didn't have the capacity to give. So we're still kind of weeding through that on how do we rebalance this thing so that I can manage my time more effectively to provide the guidance and oversight that both companies need. I'll be honest in saying I'm not doing it well. And I've been last year was a real eye opener in terms of how much we kind of lost track in terms of what we're doing at CR, if that makes sense, by not being there and being as active as I needed to be. So it definitely is not perfect. And I would say to anybody out there is if you're going to do something like this, just be very mindful of that because it's almost like, you got to be able to manage like the absentee ownership isn't a good thing. It's not possible without that strong team on the other end of it. And even with the strong team, they need some guidance and oversight and that hand-holding piece of it on a more consistent basis than I was able to provide. And it still isn't great, but it's something we're working on.
How did you identify that? At what point did you realize, okay, like something needs to change here?
Yeah. Financials started to slide and the team was very open and transparent with me. They made it very clear and very well known that they need help, and I wasn't there to give it to them.
So let's talk about the culture. We know that there's two organizations; they're geographically not in the same place, but have you noticed that the culture, the people, kind of that HR environment has kind of morphed into a similar feel at both organizations over the couple of years of kind of, or do they really feel like two different organizations?
That's a tough one because the business I bought had an existing culture that I've kind of inherited and have worked with and helped mold a little bit kind of moving forward. And to be honest, I've been able to kind of learn from some mistakes along the way of what I did at CR and not make those mistakes again. On how I handle things and how I, deal with certain situations. So I would say they're similar, but they're definitely unique in terms of the individual cultures. And I think that's, again, the business I bought, there's been employees working together for over 10 years there. So it's a little bit different than whereas CR, we have a lot of new people all the time there, younger people, that sort of thing. So just by default there alone, the age gap is going to create a different culture altogether, or that, the ability to kind of read each other's minds a little bit because they've been together so long is another piece of that. So.
And those like the high turnover at one organization versus the stability at the other is just based on that the type of business that you're offering, the type of people that you need in those. Yeah. And did you notice? I don't know if how applicable some of these buzzwords are, but the Great Resignation, kind of the post-COVID transient work environment that we saw across Canada. Did you see a spike in kind of people leaving versus normal, and kind of was it a challenge to kind of keep people on board or staying with the organization?
The biggest, we did lose one really good employee to a larger outfit who all of a sudden was offering remote work. So I think, pre-COVID, that never would have likely been an option, but because of COVID, they started to expand a little bit, and then she was able to access, that type of role and that sort of thing. And we wish her all the best. We can't compete with some of those types of things, right? The work from home thing definitely posed a massive challenge for us. We tried to embrace it and then realized that we need to have people in office for what we do, just the sake of the business that we're in. That was a struggle to kind of navigate both those sides. But in terms of Great Resignation, I don't think that was a thing really. We were forced to make decisions during that time to kind of right size the company a little bit based on what the new new marketplace and outlook was for us. That was just the nature of the beast. So other than that, there wasn't a mass exodus, but that work from home thing was really a thorn in our side a little bit. So.
But you can imagine, I mean, just the remote work option would open up your competition. Like all of a sudden you're competitive against
100%.
More major players out of Toronto or other major markets in the lower Southern Ontario. And when you had, I guess it went both ways, because you said earlier about being in a smaller market. Sometimes it's hard to get that talent that you need in that smaller market. But when you do have that talent in that smaller market, if somebody is offering higher salaries from a work from home environment, then you're competing against them for that talent as well.
And I should say we did capitalize on that too. We were able to hire a graphic designer that was, many miles away. And what it did do is force us to get all of our systems online, get our cloud services in place for our file sharing and all that type of stuff.
As it did for many businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for security's sake and for backups and stuff like that, it's been a fantastic advancement there. So.
Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit to a couple of maybe harder questions. Have you ever had a worst day in business? Is there one day or one situation that jumps out that you're like, that is definitely the hardest thing I've ever?
Multiple, Trevor. Well,
that's that's what I mean. Is like, as a business owner, you think like no, there's no one. I could name 10. But when I say what's the hardest thing you've ever done in business, what's the first thing that jumps?
Do a mass layoff in one day. I think we had to eliminate 5 or 6 people in one day. That was gutting. There was the COVID days, which I still have PTSD from, where I was, just completely melting down because I thought everything I built was gone and not coming back. There was a supplier issue one time where we were trusting a relatively new supplier to deliver for one of our huge clients. And I had it ended up working out, but I had this this worry that he was screwing us and I was going to lose, north of $100,000. So that was my first full-blown mental breakdown. Yeah, there's been a couple key ones that really stand out for sure. Probably the absolute worst was when we were forced to do that layoff, and that's not fun. It's nobody. Yeah, it's awful.
I one of my business is fucking hard articles. I think the second one I ever published was called My Hardest Day in Business, or something like that. It was about the hardest day in business, and it was the exact same thing, Matt. It was about the day that I laid off 7 people, and like that. There's a trust that you build with the people when you have a business. There's a trust from them that you're going to continue to employ them, and there's a trust from you that they're going to work for your business. And as a business owner, you mentally feel like you breach that trust when you have to lay somebody off from your business. And that was gut wrenching to me, 100%. So, tell me a little bit about the evolution of your coping with those types of things. So you go from laying off the layoff day to COVID to your biggest supplier, all of those stories, and you're saying like it was heavy, emotionally heavy. You're going to lose this thing that you've worked your whole life to build, as you've made it through all of those things, because you're still a business owner, because your business is arguably more successful than it's ever been. It's evolved. Does your coping kind of get enhanced as time goes on to be able to say, okay, I've been through a lot. This is just another adding to the pile.
Absolutely. It's a callus, right? You start to build the callus around it, and it sucks, but you got to do it. You just kind of deal with it head on. Alcohol really helps a lot, but those days.
If that's your coping mechanism, I think we need a different conversation, and I'm happy to have that.
they're heavy, but you got to pull through. And I see this thing keep popping up on my Instagram. It's Tom Hanks saying, "This too shall pass. This too shall pass." If it's
Yeah.
good, don't get too comfortable because this too shall pass. If it's bad, don't worry so much because and I think that does definitely rings true. I don't know why that thing keeps showing up on my feed all the time, but it definitely is that reminder that yeah, this is going to suck. Today's going to be rough, and I can vividly remember those mornings when I woke up thinking this is going to be a tough one. But after a couple days and a couple drinks, it starts to level itself out, and you worry about the next thing. And again, no different than the positive stuff. You can be riding a wave today. And I've said that to lots of people. As soon as that bus gets on the road, don't get too comfortable because the wheel's going to fall off sooner than later, and just be ready for it. So, it's definitely a roller coaster every single day, it seems like. Sucker for punishment. I can't imagine doing anything else. Even talking about retirement, and I don't know, I've had a lot of circumstances in the last year that really made me reflect and think about that a little bit of, what are we doing it for? Are we going to go retire to the South at 65? Not a chance. Are we going to, go take 16 weeks vacation? No way. I'm going to keep doing this or something like resembles this forever. I'm not going to retire. It's fun. It's a challenge. It keeps you on your toes. It's, to me, I look at everything as an opportunity. Like if we're going to misstep this, where's the opportunity to fix it? And I need to have that challenge every day to be able to wake up in the morning and start running. So
challenge. I like that. I do. I was being a little bit facetious when I asked that, but it is an interesting question because I think everybody's motivation is a little bit different. I mean, retiring versus working really hard is those are two very different things. Yeah. But why do you work so hard? And if it's the challenge and just kind of overcoming those challenges every once in a while and getting the wins, that's enough. That's enough to you're doing, right?
And just to see how far I can take it. That's a big one right now, is especially with the runway I think we have with this new company. I'm just, that's what motivates me to keep going is where are we going to take this thing? How high can we get with it? Not saying that I have to be a $10 million company or that's even in the goal. It's how can we build a strong team, a strong set of processes, and really just absolutely crush it. So
in like a very blunt and straightforward way, what would you say to other business owners and to people, maybe new business owners or people looking to I know there's lots of young people that go to university, as I did, to go into to the business of or the College of Business or Commerce or whatever it is, aspiring to get into business, and then I quickly shifted and didn't finish that degree, but about
it's fucking hard. You pretty well nailed the name of this thing. You summed it up right there. It's fucking hard. Every day's a grind.
Yeah.
If you're doing it right, every day's a grind, in my opinion, because you have the wolves are at the door, the competitors, everybody wants to take what you're building, and you really don't have a day off. Like if you're going to succeed, you got to be committed to that. And I respect people that can shut down and take the vacation and all that type of thing. I can't do it, but I take vacations, but there's always something going on in my mind about what's happening next. It's fucking hard. I don't know if I can articulate it any better than you already have.
Well, in that case, it was a great name for the podcast.
Absolutely. As soon as I saw the name, I'm like, yeah, I'm in. I'm definitely in on this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so before I let you go, you've been very gracious with your time. The evolution of learning and like we talked already about, just being in business is its own lessons, right? Like we learn lessons, very expensive lessons often. But what are you doing to be intentional about, like you talked about going to New York to take some social media training and that kind of thing.
Yep.
But now where you're at kind of from a business perspective, what do you reading or articles or what's your go-to?
So I think leading up to where I am today, I've spent a ton of time, a ton of money, a ton of, attention on learning everything I can from people who have been there, done that. I've got to say there's one course that really knocked my socks off. It was, I know some people are going to roll their eyes when they hear this, but it was Tony Robbins. It was
Yeah.
business mastery. It was down in Florida. It was, I think, 5 days, 70 hours worth of training over 5 days. Like they had us there till 1 a.m. one time. 2,000 like-minded individuals that pretty well covered every aspect of business, from financial to marketing to everything in between. And it was mind-blowing and game-changing, Trevor. Like the way it was a fortune to go to, but it really, really, really changed the way I approach a lot of things. And there's some really core principles that have been hammered down there. So I would say leading up to where I am today, I just read everything, took in everything, paid the money to go learn some new stuff from people that have been there, done that sort of thing. Mentorship, asking as many questions as possible, getting just totally involved in it. Where I am today, I think we do have a pretty robust tool belt in terms of how to problem solve and how to kind of deal with some of these situations. So just saying that to my key staff there the other day is like, there's not too many problems we don't know the answer to if we just sit down and concentrate on it. But in terms of industry specific, I'm just all over social. I try to block out the bullshit and all the nonsense and just focus on the groups and the feeds and the channels that are dedicated to the industry that I'm in, just to learn new techniques, new ideas, new stuff like that. But for business fundamentals, I'm going to say that that Tony Robbins thing and some of the other mentors and stuff have definitely got me to where I needed to be able to handle these situations now.
Yeah, and that's kind of the what our introduction was to each other was just kind of through social, but just kind of just some great conversations I was following that.
Quoting you today with your decision fatigue article. I'm pretty sure that's what kind of got me to you in the first place during COVID, and that is absolutely true. And I was kind of in that face of it this past couple of weeks. It's just completely burnt out just from decision fatigue. So that's why stepped down from some of the responsibilities I had to be able to refocus and retool a little bit.
It really is all leadership and entrepreneurialism is yes. Making decisions, right? That's your
nonstop.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah.
Matt, I really appreciate it. This was really wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure anybody, if anybody listens, anybody that listens inspired and
And I invite anybody that's listening, if you're looking to expand your network, I'm 100% available. Like I say, I thrive off talking to other business owners and batting around ideas and helping problem solve. So by all means, you can put my contact information on this anytime you like. Cool. Thanks, Trevor.